Previously on Stay in Your Lane, here's what I need to do. I actually need to do one shipment without liability on the product so I can understand what's going on. So I went to the shipper, but they had 6 shipments refused to temp before they came to me. So I went back to the shipper and said, okay, when was it made and how long was it in a blast freezer? Well, it turns out they did not have it in the blast freezer long enough for it to really lower the core temp
So
of the
you had a heat
product.
sink the entire load.
We had the heat sink the entire load. The reefer unit never came off of high speed. We got to the receiver only to be refused.
Was the product loaded all the way to the back of the trailer, or did you have 4 feet or 6 feet, 8 feet?
I believe there was approximately 8 feet in the trailer. It was single stacked and 4 feet high. So we didn't have a pinch chute where maybe a chute was pinched off and it wasn't allowing the air to circulate. We had room around all 4 sides of the product. I mean, it showed up in absolute, it looked like it hadn't ridden in the trailer for days. So it looked like it was just loaded on the receiving end. All of those things were perfect, right? So we say, hey, if we're going into a refrigerated dock, we should shut the unit off when we back into the door so we don't pull in warm air. That's number one. But if you shut the unit off, you also lose your ability to record your temperature.
Well, in the same respect, though, shutting the unit off, if it's a one pick, one drop, I,
Yep.
I wouldn't disagree with that. But if, our business is oftentimes multiple stops. So you're at the first receiver and you're in Florida, you open that back door and you shut the unit off, you great for the first guy, but you're turning, realistically, you're turning that trailer into an easy bake oven for the other stop. So that's where I'm not a fan.
You
I
know,
understand it, but
it's difficult because if the dock is refrigerated and within temp, and you back into it, and your unit's working, you're actually pulling warm air into the trailer on the dock.
sure.
So ideally, you want to shut the unit off when you back into the dock. Our contention was, well, how do we help the process? Do we ask the driver to back into the dock location, but don't hit the dock locks and keep his doors shut until they're ready to receive him? That would make great sense to us, right?
Except that most consignees, if you're not backed into the trailer or backed into the door and they can activate and lock you in, they're going to skip the door.
There you go. So then you're late on miss a delivery. So,
Right.
we've analyzed it every way possible, and even if you have multiple stops on, as long as your doors are only open while the product is being removed out of it, and then the doors are closed again, and then the refrigeration unit is started back up, I think that's an ideal scenario. Where we have problems is where we go into, whether it be South Texas or Central Texas or even Northern Texas or Florida or these extreme warm climates in the South or West, where we know we have to be due diligent on temp, but by the time you make a couple deliveries in a day and you've still got a third one to make or a fourth one to make in the area, how are you supposed to guarantee or ensure temp?
You're that's you're playing with fire on both sides, whether you shut the reefer unit off or not.
Correct, because we all know that it's going to warm up when we pull it off at each stop. Joe, what is your perspective?
Well, I think you got to separate multi-stop versus single drop. That's the first thing. The,
Agreed.
the, hand, the handling characteristics are completely different, as has been stated earlier. Again, I think this is right. There's some reefer trailers today that when the door opens up, it automatically
Yep.
shuts off the reefer. That's true. That's
Yep.
still true.
Yes.
again, it comes down to how long is the door open? How long do you take to get the product off the trailer? When you pulp it, are you pulping it inside or outside? I mean, I think as the responsible shipper, you need to know how the receiver, what's his receiving process. So again, so you can have an intelligent conversation about, okay, where did this issue happen? And again, not that I'm taking the carrier's position all the time, but again, I keep on going back to with these telematics that they can tell you exactly how that reefer unit was running. And I think you really even got to bring in the TKs and the carriers of the world to help with education of shippers and receivers. So I think a lot of people don't get it.
Well, you bring up a great point, Joe. I have reached out to Thermo King and Carrier for representatives to come speak on their behalf on what they are doing and what their equipment can do and what it cannot do and
Right.
what they see. So they're going to be looking at these scenarios and talking with us. The gray areas are no longer, it used to be you put the product on the trailer and you go make a delivery and nobody had a way to know what was going on in the trailer, right? Of all the technology tools that we have now. But anything that's a piece of technology or equipment or computer or software or anything, we all know they're great when they work correctly, but when they don't, they're terrible, right?
Absolutely.
So when we get a bad recorder, for example, and a load is rejected based on the recorder temp, and we have to understand now what's going on. So if it's supposed to be run on continuous, you're going to see continuous means it's going to put that temperature of air into the trailer within a degree of it. It's going to blow out into the trailer. So if you set it at 32 or 34 degrees, it's continually putting 32 or 34 degrees, whichever point you have it set on, into the trailer when it's operating correctly. And that means it'll go through defrost cycles, but it's continually going to put that temperature of air in the trailer. When you are on start stop or cycle sentry, there are adjustable parameters on everybody's unit. I believe up to maybe a 7-degree variance. So when you do that, it's going to blow when the unit starts up because it's hit that ceiling of 7 degrees. If you set it at 34, when it hits 41, then that unit's going to blow ice cold frozen air onto the product to bring the box temperature down. And when it gets to the box temperature it's looking for on the return air, then it's going to shut off again and wait to run again. Now, carriers have done this in the past at times to try and save money.
Right.
To save on reefer fuel and diesel fuel. I would say that you would see that scenario more when economically the market is more difficult, like we're in today. I think you're going to see those chances taken more so when diesel fuel is extremely expensive. It's come down some, which should lessen the number of those instances where people, I think that's the human error element on the driver level or the carrier level. There's no insurance for that type of behavior. But in this scenario, before we leave you today, and we pick this back up with some more guests involved, before I leave you today, the one important thing I want you to think about is if this product was held at temp and the carrier's download is as clean as this one, and we are confident that the download is more accurate information than a temp tail. Normally, 9 times out of 10, we're going to say that. Are you going to agree with that, Nathan or Joe?
Well, I think for the reefer unit, I think with the telematics that they have, that'll absolutely tell you what kind of air is blowing in there, what the temp is, and how long it was maintained. It's not going to help with the actual product if it was loaded warm. The reefer unit's not going to tell you that.
If it's loaded warm, you're going to see that it was loaded warm by the temp tail.
But
or
again,
the download.
I'm a carrier. I'm blowing 32 degree air into the trailer. The telematics says that it only varied 1 or 2 degrees in the 15-hour run, whatever it is, and as long as, when the product was in the trailer, it was running at 32. So, Mr. Shipper, Mr. Receiver, the issue is probably on your side. Is my unit, again, is the unit running? Is it, as long as it's prepped and it's in good maintenance? That would be my response.
Right.
Again, maybe I'm not involved in it daily anymore. Maybe I'm missing something here.
No, I think you're all over it. Nathan, what are your thoughts? Are you going to take the download from the carrier as the most accurate piece of knowledge, or a temp tail?
So the number one thing that I'm going to use is destructive temperatures. If we get to a customer and the temp tail is alarmed, it may have been alarmed due to, air temperature over 40 degrees. It will throw the alarm. The next step is the destructive temperatures. To us, the actual probe in the product, if it's over that, that will trigger the rejection. And then we actually were using fork heights for an instance not too long ago where he was put in, he got in between his appointment, put in the yard, backed into a door, and tried of the reefer download. And, it helped show the story.
Right.
So we try to take everything into account. The reefer download for sure is an important piece of the puzzle. But I'm also the destructive temperature from the customer is also, those are the primary pieces that I'm going to look at.
So when we look at our cold chain and we say, okay, in this scenario, we don't see any evidence that the product was loaded warm on the refrigerated download, off the reefer download, because the return air temp is so spot on. It would, in the fact that the facts are the product sat in the warehouse for 2 weeks, the refrigerated portion for 2 weeks ahead of going into our trailer. So we didn't get product that was made the day before or the day of or 2 days before. We have 2 weeks history of the product sitting in the warehouse, which is actually at temp, right? So we feel very confident that the timeline isn't hurting us from a manufacturing or warm product going onto the trailer. And also the download matches with that. The download actually shows that. And if it was a warm product loaded, we would see warmer return air temp, and it would be spiking at 2 to 4 hours after leaving the shipping location. We would start to see the evidence of that in the download because we've seen it before. And then we get to the receiver and we have zero communication, no control of the product, no notification. If it's a 6 a.m. delivery, I'm someone that would say by 6:30, someone ought to be notifying us that the product's warm. Open the doors. First thing you're going to do is pulp the product or pull the recorder. And if the recorder it doesn't say what the box temp says, then you're going to pulp the product right then and there and say, is this product warm? Now, sitting in a extremely warm climate for hours.
Continue watching on the next episode of the Stay in Your Lane podcast.